Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, Deep Space Nine Blood Oath. Yeah, it's GOS time. Bringing back the Klingons. Blood Oath on It's All Been Checked Before. You don't have to make a Blood Oath to us, but you could become a Patreon member. Patreon.com/IBD supports us. Don't cost much. Don't take much, and you get so much for it. We become like blood brothers and sisters. We take the Blood Oath. You give us a couple bucks a month. Or more, then it's really a blood oath. Then it's a bloodbath. But no, blood oath. And this is blood oath. Deep Space Nine, and It's All Been Checked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And the sacred Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are here to discuss the Deep Space Nine episode, Blood Oath, First Impressions.
Less blood than I expected.
There's a fair amount, but I understand that. You don't see it a lot.
No, it's always hard to tell if I'm giving like a first impression or rather like more of like an overall thing. But I was impressed with the handling of the Dax character. Finally, certainly. Well, I mean, not finally. I mean, there've been a couple good ones, but this is the way you should do it. Certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for my Jimmy, you've talked a lot about how DS9 tracks more to TOS than to TNG in so many ways, and bringing these three guys back, to give them more depth is great. And
I'm sorry, have we seen them before? Like these characters?
Yes, they're all original series Klingon captains.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
We'll get into it in a second. We'll talk about their episodes.
The makeup's a lot different, and it's 25 years later or whatever. But and then getting more into Dax, but also even more into how do we process the Trill thing and all that, which I'm still processing a lot of that. It's still fairly new to me. So I thought that was all really interesting. Yeah, like I said, William Campbell, I love Michael Ansara, I love John Colicos. I love those guys actors, and I just like them being able to expand these roles. So yeah.
They were all relatively two-dimensional villains the first time around. So this is great.
Yes. Yeah.
I will say, so my first impression is I absolutely love this episode. I think DS9 really knows how to do Klingon episodes. We're going to get a lot of them, mainly seasons 4 through 7, once we add Worf to the cast, which it's not a spoiler. I know Keith and Steven already knew that Worf was coming. So we got a little over a year till we get there. But we have some great Klingon characters in DS9 besides Worf. And whenever it gets heavy Klingon, Jadzia is usually involved, which I think is a wonderful characterization for her, because she's a little bit Klingon in some ways in spirit. So I love that. I agree with Steven. I love the three guys. I do want to ask right now, you knew that it was three legendary Klingons returning, and I'm pretty sure you did know before watching it, were you expecting them to look like they did in the original series? And did it throw you that they didn't?
In my brain, I had the original looks in my brain. Yeah. But then when I saw them.
Sorry, I had a similar question actually about that, and just So they appeared in the original Klingon makeup, obviously if they were in TOS. One thing that stood apart for me, I guess. Right, let me slow down. I noticed for some of the older Klingons, especially when they have them in one of the Star Trek series, they don't do the voice. They're not, I'm a monster, I'm an ogre. It's just the depth of just, I'm a man who happens to be this, and this is I've lived this. I've got the philosophy, and you see they get to explore those kinds of. They've lived long enough to be able to question. The idea of the kamikaze lifestyle of things, or war for war's sake.
Yeah, and to that point, I like the these guys are distinguishable and not indistinguishable, which is I'm not as crazy about. I mean, Worf's grown on me, and a lot of the other Klingons, Gowron, of course.
You haven't met Martok yet. I love Martok. Yeah. I can't wait for you to meet Martok.
So I've come around on them, but initially, and Jimmy was saying, these guys were two-dimensional villains, but William Campbell's always fun, and Michael Ansara is, like I said, these guys are really good actors, and Colicos is in Air and Mercy, which is one of the underrated, but also top-rated episodes of TOS, and Campbell's in Trouble with Tribble, so I
was going to say, to jump on what Steven's saying, because I did want to mention each one. John Colicos' Core, who was the drunkard in this episode. He was Aaron of Mercy, which was the end of season 1. Bill Campbell is Koloth, who, of course, was Trouble with Tribbles, as well as playing Trelane in the
Oh,
Spire
wow.
of Gothos.
Fire of Gothos, yeah.
And Kang is Michael Ansara, who was in the season 3 episode Day of the Dove, who had maybe the worst makeup of the original Klingons. It was real greasy.
It was very brown face.
But these are the same characters, even though they look quite different.
I was reading when they wanted these 3 guys, they knew that Ansara and Kolokos were still acting, but they couldn't find William Campbell, and they found him. He was doing
In a drunk tank
on cruise ships. So they found him.
Oh, I guess he wasn't.
They found him there. They got him, signed him up.
Well, this is William Campbell's penultimate acting role. He was in an episode of Kung Fu: The Legend Continues, and 2 years after this, and that's it.
What? Oh, Kung Fu. Huh,
Yes.
Interesting.
He did do a Star Trek video game the year before this, voicing Trelane.
What was it? Do you remember the roles well? I feel like Stephen might. Remember their original appearances well enough to say how they compare here. Were they like consistent with the characters, the voices, that sort of thing?
I remember 2 of the 3 pretty well.
Yeah, I think
they weren't that consistent. Sorry,
yeah, I think Core was just he. And I'm reading here, they wanted him to be more like a Falstaff here.
Yeah.
So they made him more of a drunk and all that. I think there is. Well, I'm trying to remember now. I think I'm mixing my episodes, but I think there was a fight at a bar on Aaron of Mercy.
There was a Trouble with Tribbles. For
and
sure.
same with Trouble with Tribble, so maybe that's just a combination.
Oh, was that the Scotty thing with the insult of the ship?
Yeah, that was Koloth.
Yeah. And Saris Kang is kind of similar. And Saris got they all have good distinctive voices, but Ansara's got that deep resonant. But like Pete Jackson, he's got that very voice. Like, oh man, this guy's awesome.
I think in terms of playing the character and voice and everything, it was consistent. But in terms of characterization, we saw very different sides of them. But I also think that makes sense over 100 years later with everything they've gone through. Right. So that's where I didn't you come and check in with me when I'm 80. I'm not going to seem quite the same, probably.
Probably not.
Something else they said here is the story was really entitled The Beast, and they envision it being like the Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven, which makes sense with the way the episode ends and everything.
I know. Were you bummed, just to skip ahead, were you bummed that 2 of the 3 of them died in this mission?
Yes, I was, yeah.
So for Bill Campbell, I said he only had 1 other acting credit after this, so this is really a wrap on him for the franchise, even though we will have some archival footage of... They do it in a really cool way. You'll see Koloth again in DS9 one more time. It's the 60s Koloth, and they do it in a really cool way. Yeah. We'll get to that. But the other 2, John Kolokos, who played Core, he's going to do more episodes of DS9 because he's the one that survived. The Drunkard, he's in a couple more episodes of DS9 before DS9 ends. I think 1 in season 4 and 1 in season 7. So we'll get him throughout the run every once in a while. And Michael Ansara, who played Kang, will get in an episode of Voyager, appropriately enough entitled Flashback, that takes place earlier than this in the timeline. So we're going to get some Michael Ansara. We're going to get Kang once more in an earlier story. So it's not the last we'll see of any of them, but it's the last new stuff we'll get of Bill Campbell, unfortunately. As much as I was disappointed that they died, they were meaningful deaths. The episode did what it needed to do. And I appreciated that they didn't all survive it. Because there was definitely an element, and this is kind of an overall note, that this was a suicide mission, that we find out, that's like a twist we find out partway through the episode, is these guys are intending to go out in glory because they're old, and they know they're past their prime, and that's just the way they want to die. And so to me, that makes the deaths a little easier to accept, because Core's the only one who really seems like he wants to live, and he does. The other 2 get what they want, makes it easier. And they do win. They take down the albino. So the concept itself of 4 men, because Jadzia was part of the Blood Oath, going after this guy who was this villain that's loomed so large in their lives and that murdered their children. Like, what a great epic story. Yeah. And it felt epic to me.
Well, and I wrote very early on, why do they hate albinos? But then they justified it. It's like, oh man, this is hardcore.
Yeah. The albino himself, played by Bill Bolender, who is best known for RoboCop 2, Dante's Peak, Reality Bites, and The Shawshank Redemption. He's got a few more recent credits too. He was extremely cartoonish and one-dimensional, and I think that's fair given what they needed to accomplish with the episode. There just wasn't time for him. But
The albino, you said?
yeah. This, interestingly enough, this was directed by Winwich Colby, one of our regulars. It was written by Peter Allen Fields. He only has 3 writing credits for Next Gen. He wrote Half a Life, Cost of Living, and The Inner Light. The Inner Light being the notable one. Besides Inner Light, he also previously wrote the episode Dax in season 1. Progress, which I liked. Teleplay, not Teleplay. Duet, which we loved at the end of season 1. He wrote The Circle and Necessary Evil earlier this season, and will do Story by for crossover at the end of this season. And then he's got For the Uniform, In the Pale Moonlight, which is my favorite episode of Trek ever, and The Dogs of War. So looking at his past credits, I really think we shouldn't be surprised at how good this episode was. And I wish it would appear more in the list of best DS9 episodes. My only argument for why it doesn't is DS9 has so many really good episodes. And I would not argue this is better than Duet, but it's such a good episode that the only reason it's not at the top is because there's so many other good ones to compare it to. But I loved it.
I'm jumping ahead a couple different ones here.
We haven't even started the play-by-play yet, so you're not. You can jump wherever you want.
So, do you guys think that Dax can she can, they can obviously, but should they go on this mission?
I mean, by Trill Society, I think not, because you're supposed to leave the past behind. But I think it's a testament to how deep Curzon's bond was with them that she'd want to, and also just Dax's character herself. It feels like something she would want to do.
And
that's a couple of good points there that needed to be. I think that needed to be made there actually about just the driving force behind all of it. I get distracted because I remember how they were playing it through season 1 with Dax. And, they're having the dinners with Cisco, and Cisco always calling her old man. And it seemed like they kept wanting to establish that was taboo for Trill Society. You're supposed to almost like pretend like, I don't know. Right. It's not like pretend like the other lives didn't happen, but it's something about like that kind of interaction was supposed to be like, welp, cutting off all ties, that kind of thing. But how could they do that there? So.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to contradict myself here. I think that makes sense, and I love learning that aspect. And I felt like it'd been discussed before, but to me, it got driven home here. But also the conflict there got driven home, and also just from obviously I'm the Godfather fan. I feel like as the godmother, it's like. So
Dax is sometimes held up as Star Trek's first real attempt to deal with trans people. The character. And when that's brought up, there's a line from this episode that is frequently mentioned as one of the best examples of how DS9 does it. Where Core says,
the brother, sister,
Curzon, my old friend, and gives her a big hug. And she's like, actually, I'm Jadzia now. And his response is, Jadzia, my old friend, and hugs her. If you don't know how to treat a trans person after their transition, watch Core, because that is exactly... I will say the other 2 Klingons will handle it as well, but Core handles it perfectly, and I loved that moment so much.
That's why he lived.
I was going to say even that is arguable in a way, because what might seem like mishandling, in a sense, they are treating Jadzia exactly as a different person than she was from Curzon. They were treating her like they would treat any woman. They were treating her like someone who didn't actually make the commitment. You're a separate person now. Done. But at the same time, there's also that it's not supposed to be if we're going completely with like comparing the trans, you wouldn't. This is not like a completely different person either. This is the same person they always were. But you know what I'm saying. That's
the thing. Like, she is a different person. If you're talking about the aliens of Star Trek and how you should treat a Trill, they're not doing anything wrong by saying you're not beholden to this. But if you're talking purely as the metaphor for trans relations, then them saying you're a different person is against what the
right.
But yeah, I just love that line. I love that moment, and it makes me love Core even more. I love Core so much. I'm so glad he gets to do a few more episodes of DS9 before the end.
There was something. All right, so what we were talking about just before you got back, the consistency. I guess it makes sense for Dax's character that he doesn't seem to play by the rules of certain kinds of things. I guess we saw that another great Dax episode was when she was expected to mentor the the guy who's coming up, the one who resented. He was trying to do all the right things, all the things he thought was right, and she was sort of taking out her, the way that she was treated on him in a certain way, almost like passing along the hazing. But the point is, you get to learn more about Curzon in that sense. He was the sort of person who wouldn't, like, he seemed to go against the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the rules, but that's what I'm saying. The
Dax is a symbiote.
convention,
Is a bit rebellious. Yeah.
Yes.
No, Dax is a symbiote is rebellious.
Right.
That's present in every iteration of Dax, I think.
Yep. There we go. So, and Steven said something earlier in this recording about still trying to get your head around the idea of how they work, and it kind of feels like sometimes that's what they're doing as they're writing it anyway. And that's what it seems like a lot of series do. And it takes a while for them to go, okay, well, we finally got it. Somebody finally got it. And we have to stick with this. So I don't know. It feels like we're getting there.
And you also have to think of individuality. Like every Trill experience isn't the same. This is Jadzia's version of that.
Right.
Yeah. To jump back to the beginning of the episode, because we haven't done that yet, we start out with Quark complaining to Odo that there's a Klingon who paid for 1 hour in the holosuite, but he's been in there 3. And he won't leave, and he's going to kill me if I shut off the power. And Odo's like, well, I'm going to shut off the power. And he's like, but then he'll kill me. And he's like, well, we'll see. And
I love it.
It's good. It's really good that the way they do it. And Kor's introduction is great. I think all 3 of the Klingons get great introductions, because we get Kor's introduction of the drunkard who keeps losing the fight, but it's very easy to distract him and be like, no, we want to celebrate you. And he's like, okay, great.
Fantastic.
But then Koloth's interaction is, I've come to bail him out. Oh, he's drunk. I'm disgusted. I'm going to leave him, which is also good. They mentioned that Kor's like 100 years old and Koloth's like 150, or at least that's how Odo says them. I didn't realize there was such an age difference between them. That's interesting.
I was going to say that when you reminded me of that setup, me not knowing the background of what was happening, or like where the characters actually were, who they were in relation to the series, I didn't really have quite the same effect. But it reminds me now, knowing what I know now, of like when you're watching a comic book movie, and you don't necessarily know characters coming up. They're like setting up these cameos for you, like, oh, we've got this unruly superhuman who's doing blah blah blah, and this thing, and they're describing it like, oh, I wonder if it's that kind of thing. That sort of like mixture of surprise and anticipation.
Well, and the episode's very much getting the band back together.
Yeah,
it's very much the Blues Brothers, or I'm saying Blues Brothers, but pick your. Yeah, I'm getting too old for this stuff kind of thing. So it is like, all right, yeah, you got me. All right, I'm in.
The age difference thing, I guess it makes sense that Kor's the one that lives, because he's the younger one, and he does seem like the younger brother of the 3 of them.
I guess, well. Right. I'm almost answering my own question before I even asked it, but I guess I hadn't been aware of whether or not they'd established what Klingon lifespans are. I mean,
So, as far as I remember, they live roughly to like 150, 160. So they're at the end of the lifespan anyway, if they don't die in battle. So they're halfway between like humans and Vulcans, I think.
I guess that's why you wouldn't normally talk about that often, because how often do they live long enough to, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. They talk about how you don't see many old Klingon warriors, but these 3 survived, which is great.
Die in the battlefield.
Yeah.
They die with honor. We get into that later too. Dishonor or honor, whatever. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Vax is godfather to Kang's child. That's an interesting. Yes. I like that. We get some establishment that Curzon opened the door between the Klingons and the Federation. I kind of wish Curzon had been involved in Star Trek 6. I wish they had a little foresight to throw that in there.
Oh my God. They did retcon something like that eventually.
Yeah. The releasing her from the oath, that makes sense. I liked the episode where Dax asked Kira how many people she killed, and that Kira tries to dissuade her. That's really interesting on Kira's part, because Kira clearly regrets killing, right? Not regrets, but doesn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah,
I love that conversation. I thought it was funny, but it was also to the point. It was also like, that's when your mind starts going through like, oh man, this is a big deal. But the specific part I love is Kira is like, why are we talking about this? If it bothers you, you can stop. It bothers me. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Love it. Yes, exactly.
Why are you thinking about killing somebody? And she's got to find out. But that exchange is just, and we've talked about this before. A lot of the dialogue on here, you could put in a sitcom, whether now or then, and it works. And I think that's without it feeling, and I said that without it feeling like set up punchline.
Right.
I mean that more in the witty repartee, for lack of a better term. So I love this conversation for so many reasons. So it was great.
I hadn't thought of that. We talked about that before about about DS9 having the freedom. I forgot about that. Having the freedom to portray things in ways that TNG doesn't. Those kinds of interactions between crew people and just that kind of, it's certainly not over level, but it's closer to that kind of. It could drop into a sitcom or something like that. And also, and I think we're still at the point where we have to be able to call out things like this. This is whatever the opposite of like the Bechdel test would be, I would think.
Yes.
How dare you? How dare you, Keith?
They steal your no. Two women having a conversation like
I am offended.
Having a conversation like this of that kind of substance of just not it just had nothing, you know what I'm saying? Portraying a friendship in that way rather than it being the thing they do in TNG sometimes too, unfortunately. Yeah.
Stretching out in a aerobics room and
yes.
Yeah,
there were no leotards in this scene, and that made the scene weaker for it. No, of course not. I liked Dax approaching each one individually to win her way in. I mean, Core was easy enough.
Yes.
Koloff, she challenged him to a duel, lost, but he still welcomed her because she portrayed herself well. But Keg still refused, and I really didn't get that until we make the connection that's a suicide mission.
It was so good.
And then I was like, Keg is doing that to protect her, and it's so sweet. And so they care about her as much as she cares about them. And I do love that without fail, every one of them has real affection for Dax as a person. And not because she's young and pretty, but because they all recognize the connection they built 100 years ago and still maintain.
Well, and I love that. I love that aspect. I love, and I did, and we've already touched on this, but I just love that it's not a that makes the three characters. Well, Kang presents himself initially as and he was my shady and annoying. Well, I think he ends up being my annoying person anyway. But he's so good at it; it's annoying. But kind of that Gur Klingon thing. But even these aren't to me the Gur Klingons we've seen.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's these guys have nuances, and maybe it's age, maybe it's wisdom that comes with age. They're not as worried about dishonor, although they discuss it. But yeah, I love that it's again, I love that it's distinguishing. These not every Klingon's the same. These three guys are different.
Yeah.
You just made me think of something, the whole dishonor thing. So we're seeing older Klingons having different. They've lived long enough to be contemplative about it.
I appreciate that so many. We know Worf is honorable, but so many of the other Klingons we've seen aren't. I mean, Gorkin was honorable, and Gorkin's daughter in Star Trek 6 was honorable, but so many of the Klingons we've seen aren't. And I really like the idea of bringing back three old Klingon villains and showing that they are honorable. I liked that too. But these three are all of these are honorable.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Going into Julius Caesar.
Okay. That's what I was like. I heard. So I was like, "What? What's that sound so familiar?"
They too are honorable men.
Yeah.
It'd be so easy to assume all the original series Klingon bad guys were just bad guys, like some of the next gen Klingon bad guys that are dishonorable. And it's nice to see. No, they were adversaries, but they had honor.
Yeah. No, but here's the thing about that. It wasn't honor by the letter. It was honor by spirit. That's what they were showing us in this. And that's the opposite of what we see with the Klingons. We're saying, well, they're so dishonorable, but there's always this loophole you can make with the legalese, so to speak. Oh, this is technically what we're doing, but it's lip service. It's that kind of like, this is honorable, this thing we're doing, but I'm all tangled up. You get what I'm saying.
So the next thing we've got in here is that Kira goes behind Dax's back and tells Sisko about Kira's mission. I get she's looking out for her friend, but I feel like that's a little unnecessary and kind of shady.
I'm trying to find the transcript, but Sisko says, "Oh yeah, here it is. Kira's my first officer," and I wrote immediately afterward, note to self: don't tell first officers anything that you don't want anyone else. That doesn't.
You don't want the captain to know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, that is kind of putting Kira in a bad position too. You can't really blame her. I mean,
no. She's not my annoying person of the week for sure.
Yeah.
Although Kira could have walked away Kira's the one who stayed doggedly after her. Like, no, tell me, what are you thinking of killing someone? All right, well, I have to tell the captain now. She didn't say that, but now Dax knows.
Oh, well.
Do you think? I guess you could cut either way with the Spock. Do you think Spock would be like, "Oh, I gotta go tell Kirk this"?
Young Spock, yes. Older Spock, I don't know.
Spock would be like, "What is a logical thing, and how does it affect the
Right.
of the ship?"
And older Spock was looser with logic than younger Spock. He evolved as a character.
That's true. Well, because he was half.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's also
Half
see
logic.
that's also the other, that's the Vulcan version of the American dream right there. The whole logic thing. We've talked about that before. We got the logic and the honor, and it always ends up being that we see the
Yes.
the full Vulcans being so emotional, but cloaking it behind all these things about just it's.
Yeah, because Sarek is always talking about logic, but he's always screaming about it. You gotta be logical like me. It's like that. Wait, what? No, that. And I'm exaggerating. But.
It's like no, it's like Serenity Now.
Yeah.
I would argue in Star Trek the human version of that is nobility, which is similar to honor, but there's definitely a distinction.
Yeah.
And I think the humans in Star Trek have a nobility that some of them use in different ways, some of them a lot shadier than others.
Yeah. Sarek is, I'm being logical, you idiot.
Well, Sarek did marry a woman, so his judgment's already in question.
You mean a human?
Yeah, a human woman.
Oh, I thought.
I said a woman. I said a woman.
I thought you said just a woman. It's like, okay, what's
Not a human woman. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, from the sense of, the way things actually work, unfortunately,
Yeah, we've even remember somebody that the newer Treks, just the storylines they were doing. There were the Strange New Worlds even. That was a lot of fun. Just watching Spock and the marriage. The marriage preparations, the feuds that they were having with other Vulcans on Vulcan, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Man, I'm really hoping we get some Cybok in season 3, but I think we will. But we'll see. Anyway, Dax neutralizes the energy weapons to make it a good day to live. I really liked that. Like that's why you bring a scientist along instead of just running in to kill. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. We kind of glossed over it. We left off of it before. There was something for me. I was the twist revelation was kind of powerful for me. I don't know why. I hadn't really been following along, or I guess maybe I hadn't been analyzing ahead in a certain way. So when I understood what was happening, that was so well done. Was it Kang? Is that what we're talking about? So yeah, they're talking about it. They're talking about the plans, and Dax is pointing out. You can see like the like working on her face. I'm thinking like, okay, maybe this is where she's like, this is my stop, guys. I'm getting off here. You guys go ahead and do what you're gonna do, because she points out all the here's the strategy we can use. What? No, I won't go in there while he's sleeping like some kind of coward. We're gonna have to do this. Blah 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 blah. And then it started to hit me finally. I wasn't. I was like, these guys are all pretty old right now. They don't care. There's this moment where they kind of present it without actually saying it.
Oh, they care, but they care.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the sense that their stakes are completely different than hers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was just that kind of, and
that's why Kang tried so hard to get her not to go. But I get the feeling Kang and Koloth and Korn have never discussed this as a suicide mission, but Kang has taken it for granted that Koloth and Korn know him well enough and they know each other well enough that this is what they all want. So that they actually filmed this on location, looks like, instead of a soundstage, and that fake castle thing.
Like actually on an alien planet?
No, but you know what I mean? Normally it's very clearly a soundstage. This seems like they were actually outside. And it looks pretty, but then the castle itself is like a half castle.
The Millard House in Pasadena, California is where they did.
So it doesn't look like a full castle. It's interesting.
I'm sorry, did you say Lard House?
The Millard House.
Oh,
I mean, it could be. Oh, it's actually designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, the noted architect. Yeah, it's in.
It's a shame. It's a shame they didn't film it at the castle.
Just like Art Vanderlei.
Eschler, where they went up the one stairs and then they go up the other stairs upside down, then they went back the other stairs. That would have been cool.
Yeah, sure.
Escher.
Thank you, Stephen, for getting the whole part.
Of course.
I really enjoyed. I can't remember which Klingon did it. I should have noted. I think it was Kag. That he did a shoulder tap with the batleth
Yes.
during the fight.
Okay, so
So good.
that was another. They got me again. That swerve right there, where
Yeah.
I'm like, why aren't they stopping him from just dashing? Like, I'm gonna go ask someone. Like, what are you doing? And then
It was core distracted them. Yeah.
and it just ended up being like competent, and I love that kind of thing, where you get these. They seem like they seem like they're bumbling characters, but they're really not.
No,
And-
Core actually shows up not drunk to the actual fight.
Yeah.
And they're not going to kill somebody by stabbing in the back. They're going to get his attention first and look at him before they kill him, because that's the honorable thing to do.
No. My point is, no, they're talking about strategy, and they say,
Uh-huh.
well, how do we even know that he's even in the castle? He's like, well, I'm just gonna go ask someone, and that nobody tries to stop him from like going and giving away the position. I mean, what is going on? And we see that he actually does something that works, and it was just like, okay, well,
I did think the soldiers were very anonymous with the masks over their face, that it was very like, and first of all, they were human. The albino gets some better soldiers than humans, but
well,
I think it was a budgetary thing.
It seemed like they were all different kinds of aliens when we got in there, in the mansion proper or whatever. We saw that he had just like a random team of mercenaries
I
essentially.
made the albino his assistant, but I feel like everybody else was just a human with him.
Yeah. Probably
the same budget.
or
I thought it was
humanoid.
very much a stormtroopers kind of thing. Also,
Yeah.
I thought I wrote this, one of my fashion notes. I thought those the guards' visors were not conducive to seeing people. Like it didn't look like you could see through those.
They were all supposed to be amazing warriors. These were his best of his best, right?
Right.
Well,
And then-
with phasers.
Yeah, and then I'm not. Also, and when this is just a general, we could go off on this too, but we probably won't. I'm not sure what made me write this, but it feels like this is another place where they try to make, or maybe it's just me talking about Terry Farrell, but make war look sexy. There's the line about even an anti-war film like Apocalypse Now or whatever anti-war film you want to pick still ends up making war look kind of sexy and cool or whatever. And again, if this is, now that I know it's based on Magnificent Seven, it makes sense that it's like, okay, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, to expand on that, so you're talking about like we've got how many Klingons were there? Were there 3 or 4? 3. Only 3. It felt like there were more than that. They're rolling in there. They're like you see them kind of coming to life, reliving their glory. They're taking out all these younger humanoid soldiers. They're just because they're even the way they set it up on the ship. There's no one's going to outclass them hand to hand with the batleth and just melee combat. And it's just kind of like, yeah, you see them blowing through there, and it's just very very elegantly choreographed. People falling aside and getting to the bad guy, and just that we're avenging these things. These concepts are brought honor. Violence is going to solve it. It feels good, that feel good kind of thing.
Did you like the line about the tennis courts, or did that just seem too silly?
It was fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
It was playing into the appearance of things, and
I mean, when Klingons even know what tennis courts are.
I was wondering that. I was like, does that term even translate to? Well, I mean, not only the term tennis court, but just like the concept of what that is trying to convey. I am like this socialite who has just lost her way and kind of wandering around. I think this is a resort. Would that humor even track with them? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, even worse, guys, it was a pickleball court. So
Wow.
Let's see. When they were all fighting in the hall, Jadzia wasn't murdering the guards, right? She was just knocking them unconscious, because her whole thing was she was just going to murder the albino.
Well, see, I was thinking about even on their way there, and this is like that kind of the G.I. Joe thing when you're watching, or these people are kind of being knocked out, sort of, or that there's like so they're
Klingons were killing them. They were slashing throats.
No, all right. There's several scenes as you're watching them progress, or watching them progress through the hall or whatever, or even getting into the room, where they're just sort of like using almost like not quite judo, but just they're using the batleth as more of like an instrument to kind of like here's like a what I'm saying, like here's a strike, here's a flip, and now you're kind of stunned and unconscious on the floor, so it's hard to tell.
Watching, I was like, I expect to see heads off and blood everywhere. But 1993 or 94, you weren't going to see that either
Right.
way, which is
Right.
fine. I'm not a gore guy. And even I appreciate where the boys is going with it, but I don't love gore.
They needed the gore to make the point. It was like, this is.
I agree.
The stakes. These are the stakes. It's like, oh my god, these people are like this. This shock is like, oh my, yeah.
I agree with you, Keith. I agree. You're right.
But we should have seen some blood, but it definitely looked like the Klingons were killing guards. It did not look like Jadzia was, even though they made no deal of it.
And I'll say this: I know we've seen the Batleth many. Batleth? Am I saying that?
I second guess myself too.
But I feel like with the when Jadzia is battling Kang.
Kang. Oh, Kang.
Kang, I think she battles.
Yeah. No, it was somebody else.
Koloth.
It was Koloth. I'm sorry. When they're battling Koloth, I'm like, I've never understood how that weapon works better than I did during that. And maybe that's just I just ignored it before, but I feel like we've just seen it before and not really seen it
in action.
Yeah.
We've seen Worf use it, but yeah. You'll get to see it more. You'll get to see it more.
Yeah. But yeah, it's certainly an edged weapon, but maybe because of the helmets or something else, they downplayed the sharpness of it. So really, it did seem more like a blunt weapon. That's what I was trying to say, like a blunt instrument that they were using for leverage at times, rather than we don't actually see them like stabbing directly through or slicing explicitly.
We saw them slice throats. We saw them slice.
I missed it, I guess, but I'm just saying. But a lot of them, the main progression. Maybe once they were actually in when they're actually locked in combat with someone, maybe eventually. But.
Yeah, I think that's the nice thing of the Batleth is you can slice, you can stab, you can use it as a bow staff. It's got multiple uses.
Bow staff. That's very much what I was thinking. That's what seemed like they were using for most of the time. But I
think that's a lot of them. It's got multi-use. Yeah, Kor saying goodbye to Koloth as he died. That was a moving moment. Kang's Batleth broke, but I liked Jadzia. I think Jadzia wasn't giving him the killing blow, even though Kang thanked her for honoring him in that way. I think she just was still undecided on whether to kill him or not.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting moment. And I like that they spared her that decision. I like that they gave her that decision, but I like they spared it too.
Yes.
At first I thought, oh, this is just something for the villain, but then I realized, okay, it gives him the kill and her and them the in this instance, I'm completely okay with that.
So in that moment,
they needed to be ambiguous with Dax going out of this, that she may have been willing to kill, but if she had killed, it means something different. And I'm glad I
was going to say at that moment, I figured, okay, all the Klingons are dead at this point, and she can suddenly go, well, I'm just going to bring you to justice instead, something like that. And it's interesting, because we had that moment to just try to interpret what she was thinking and what she was going to do or what would have happened, et cetera, et cetera. And I agree that I like that they kind of just it could have been too neat in some ways, but I think it worked out the way it needed to. We had the moments, and it didn't really have to have that ending. Yeah, and which again makes me wonder about like how everyone else interpreted what she did, because we got. I was looking away and I actually had to go back and rewind to watch those last few seconds when she was back on the station. And just those exchanged looks between Sisko and then Kira. Oh my God, the way they were speaking those volumes right there. What do they know? What do they think? What did she tell them? Did she said anything at all? Probably not. And I don't know. Are the deaths that happened even on her hands at that point? I mean, did she really kill anybody? It's just.
I mean, she participated in a situation where many people were murdered, so I think there is some morality that's on her. But
I think it's not
as if she actually. It's not as actually she slit their throats herself.
Right.
No, my alternate episode is I would have liked to have seen this with the Klingons in their old style Klingon makeup.
Yeah. My alternate episode is it's essentially an episode where Kor, it's the hangover, and Kor tries to figure out what he did the night before. Because I enjoyed him at Quark's place with the ladies and all that stuff. So,
one of the Dabo goes looked like Jerry Ryan.
Yeah, she did, but it wasn't her. But she did look like it.
I wondered about that. I figured you would have mentioned it if it actually been her. But I was like, wait, is that?
I don't think so.
I think I only had 3 other notes for they do the "It's a Good Day to Die" thing many times,
Hmm.
which is a Klingon thing. And I was like, oh, that's got to be a movie, and it is a movie, but it looks like it's a B movie. Now there is "It's a Good Day to Die Hard," which I don't think is a movie. I can't remember which one that is.
What? No, there's Live Free and Live Free or Die Hard, which was like
I
the
think
fourth
there's
one.
yeah, "A Good Day to Die Hard" is the 2013 one.
Oh my God, did I see that?
Yeah,
You probably can't answer that.
John
remember
McClane
that.
travels to Russia to help out
Oh,
his
what?
kid,
No,
Wayward
yes.
son Jack. Yep.
No, wait,
So-
yeah, okay, I did see that one once.
I see Peter Allen Fields originally was going to use new Klingons, but Robert Hewitt Wolf was the one who wanted to bring in the original series Klingon captains.
Oh, nice.
Hmm.
Good. He made the right call. They say the line "Klingons embrace death too easily." I was like, yes, they do. And then,
Yep.
of course, it's very prophetic at the end. And there were some interesting shots from our director. I had it here. I don't have it now. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, it's our old friend Weinrich Colby. And I'm not surprised about it, but there's a lot of interesting profile shots of Terry Farrell, which if you're going to get a profile of somebody, her face is obviously perfect for it. But they were just very interesting. And I don't know if it was supposed to connotate something else about the duality of trills or whatever, but I just thought those were interesting shots, and not in a bad way, in a good way. So those are all the notes I have.
So about the embracing death, that's interesting. I certainly agreed with that. Again, we're going to come back to the whole American dream thing, but
Yeah.
I think the way it ended up playing out, God, I love that conversation on the ship so much now. Just even going back to it, just when she's pointing out the strategic holes in what was going on, and getting to the root of what he was just like. Well, here's what I did. I was ready to die this way, and almost in a sense negotiating again, down to a point where they're actually going to get what they want, but still get what they want. If I'm saying that right, they're actually going to achieve their goal and still also get the honorable death.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't seem like such a wasteful thing. It seemed like an appropriate way for them to be able to die at that time.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like the actor that played Kor wasn't excited about coming back as a buffoon, and he really only agreed to do it because he got to be a little bit heroic in the end, and they didn't kill him, so he could come back later. That was his sweetener, because he almost didn't do it because he didn't want to play a drunken buffoon. He thought it was very against character from what he played before.
That always amazes me when you have backstage stories like that where people can even do things like that. It's like, really? You can
say no. Sure.
But I mean, to that effect of like, well, if this, and it reminds.
Well, they had said we're thinking about keeping one alive. He's like, keep me alive, and I'll do it. That's a good solution.
Wow. But it reminds me that
they did consider doing them in the old makeup, but they were just said this is the way we do Star Trek Klingons now.
Yeah.
There will a DS9 hint at the explanation, but not get into it. I guess Star Trek Enterprise gives you the explanation on the physical changes.
Okay. I was going to say that when you talk about the Shatner stories and things like that, when you have someone who is willing to make those kinds of moves and say, I don't have enough lines, or even when he went to bat for Michelle, supposedly, just like or Nichelle, just like that kind of like, well, I'm just gonna let's keep messing up these takes until this, or using that kind of power to do something like that. And I don't know. I've heard similar stories from pro wrestling too, which is kind of fun. The idea of people backstage going, nope, my character should do this or whatever. That's.
Who was your shady character this week? I gotta go Kang for keeping from Jadzia the suicide mission. Even
I was
though
thinking the same thing.
That's a good call. I think you've made me flip mine. I'm going to go with Kang for shady as well.
What was your before?
It was going to be Albino, but I think Albino is just annoying.
Well, yeah.
I didn't choose him as my annoying, but that's fair. So you roll with the Albino. Keith, who's your annoyance?
Oh, wow.
I'll go with Cisco because it bothers me that he tries to stop Dax. I kind of get it, but also we see later he's willing to cross lines so easily, and the way he judges her just feels a little bit out of character and not the Cisco I want.
That's fair. I don't know. It seemed like it made sense the way they're presenting it to me anyway. I mean, Dax was kind of, I don't know if I would use the word reckless necessarily, but she was really putting both Kira and Cisco in really uncomfortable positions to have to deal with that sort of thing. And I'd almost go with with Dax's annoyance, but it's just
Hmm.
I don't know.
Dax?
Nah, let's go with drunk core at the beginning.
Core? Okay. I mean, I think for drink, I gotta go with Core. Are you gonna choose anybody else?
Yeah, that's mine too. Yeah, I mean, come on. He seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that makes sense too. But so like both annoyance and drink, I guess.
Sure. Right now, first place for the season is the Homecoming, the season premiere where they get not what's his name, Lee Nala and all that. I'm gonna argue for this as number one, but does anybody want to
Oh.
disagree? To me, this is number two for the series right now behind Duet, but number
Wow.
one for the season.
Was Duet the interrogation in the cell and so forth? Yeah.
But yeah, the Nazi war criminal essentially.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was last season.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
last season though. So I think this is the best of this season so far. But that's
I think that's fair at the moment. I can't think of anything else at the it's
Yeah, I'd probably stick with Homecoming.
Homecoming.
But not by a lot. Not like
it's hard for me to remember exactly how that played out even at this point. So
Below that's Necessary Evil. Would you go below that?
which one was that?
I'm looking. That's Odo flashback episode.
Oh wow. Oh, that's
our number.
I liked
two.
this more than that, but
that's tough for me when you bring that one up because that one was just that was really good.
I think I'd go above, but
okay. So Keith, above or below Homecoming? Is it number one or number two for the season?
Man. So you two are split on that, you're saying? As far as
Yeah, I want to put it as number one. Steven's going number two.
yeah.
I guess I'm probably above Homecoming at this point. I really can't remember Homecoming well enough. I guess is part of the
Recency
problem.
bias.
There is some of that, and it's just I guess I like what they accomplished a lot of things in this episode.
Yeah.
Several different types of things I really enjoyed. So especially the Trill theory, Dax's character being used correctly, the use of the old Klingons, just things like that.
Finally. We'll get more decks used correctly going forward, but this is the first like real one, I think.
Yeah, it felt big enough for what they were doing.
This was written by Piran Fields. I didn't mention before it was based on material by Andrea Moore Alton. No idea who that is. This is her only IMDb credit. So anyway, next week, Next Generation, Firstborn. In an effort to help him accept his Klingon heritage, Worf and his son Alexander attend an ancient Klingon ceremony. Until then, live long.
And prosper.
Sure.
As long as your business doesn't interfere with my business, best of luck to you and your family, and live long and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?